Welcome to the channel, guys. I'm Kelly. This is my national intel report. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and smash that subscribe button, ring that bell icon so you'll never miss out on any new videos or intel. It also helps me out at my channel, so thank you. I'm going to try to make this intel report short, but there's a lot of important information to go over. So please watch the video to the end because this is going to be a good one. National Intel Report, October 2nd, 2024. So first we're going to start off with what's happening in the United States, the shit that's going to affect us. Well, we had Hurricane Helene. Hurricane Helene was a significant weather event that impacted several regions along the U.S. East Coast and really the Gulf Coast, causing widespread damage, posing serious hazards to life and property. The storm developed in the Atlantic, rapidly strengthening into a powerful, I think, Cat 4 hurricane before making landfall September 26th. The state that was affected was Florida. They had major coastal flooding, high winds causing significant structural damage, beach erosion, and power outages that affected hundreds of thousands of residents. We had Georgia. Georgia had heavy rainfall, led to flash flooding, swollen rivers. Some rural areas saw extensive crop damage. South Carolina, of course, storm surge, high winds contributed to power outages, downed trees, flooding. North Carolina. Now, North Carolina has major flooding, right? Helene's heavy rains caused rivers to overflow, resulting in flooding in low-lying areas. They had tornado warnings were issued in parts of the state. There's still people to this day that is unaccounted for in North Carolina. And then Virginia. Virginia also had wind. Some rain impacts led to localized flooding, and the power grids was disrupted. And saying that, man, my heart goes out to everyone that was affected by this hurricane. I know what y'all kind of went through. Many years ago, we went through two hurricanes back to back. It was Laura and Delta, and we was out of power over 3.5 weeks, first one, and 2 weeks after the second one. Of course, we didn't see anything like y'all did with this powerful Cat 4, and with a lot of this damage and flooding. I said my heart goes out to y'all. The death toll as of right now for Hurricane Helene is reported to be about 175, with hundreds still accounted for. The majority of the fatalities were linked to flooding, debris caused by high winds, storm surge, and downed trees. Now, emergency service, they did work around the clock to rescue those stranded by floodwaters. But I mean, some of these places are still, you're unable to get to, right? Some people are still waiting to get rescued. The hazards, of course, with this storm was mainly storm surge. So the coastal area experienced severe flooding, with water rising up to 15 foot in some areas. Inundating homes and roads, storm surges remain one of the deadliest aspects of a hurricane, as they can sweep away entire communities with very little warning. And then, of course, the winds, high winds. Helene, I think, produced winds up to like 140 miles per hour at its peak. Those winds uprooted trees, tore off roofs off buildings, and contributed to widespread power outages. Flying debris posed a severe risk to anyone caught outside during the storm. And then also heavy rainfall and flooding. As Helene moved inland, it dropped significant amounts of rain, with some regions seeing over 15 inches. This caused rivers to overflow and streets to flood, trapping residents inside, causing flash floods in urban and rural areas alike. And then we also had tornadoes with it. In the storm's wake, there were several reports of tornadoes forming in affected areas. particularly in the Carolinas. Tornadoes can develop very quickly, and during hurricanes, it can add just extra overall destruction. So some of the key facts. One, Hurricane Helene reached Category 4 at its peak. Sorry. Storm levels, storm surge levels exceeded like 10 foot, up to 15 foot. I've heard reports of over 1 million people was left without power. And right now, people are running out of food and water. In these places, it's hard to reach, it's still flooded and hard to get to. So in saying that, some of the preparation tips that I could give, which, I hate to say this, hopefully nobody has to go through another thing like these people just did or I did several years ago, but it's going to happen. So for those of y'all that are in the hurricane prone areas like myself, pretty much from Texas, the whole southern coast, east coast, early preparations is critical. Stock up on non-perishable foods, fresh water, fuel, medical supplies. Ensure that you have an evacuation plan in place. Know your local shelter locations, and always heed warnings from authorities. Prepping for a long-term impact of hurricanes include securing your home, having alternative energy sources such as maybe generators, fortifying supplies with at least 2 weeks post hurricane. What I mean by that is typically a hurricane only lasts, we'll say 12 to 24 hours, as far as once you start feeling the winds until after the hurricane's passed and everything kind of goes back to normal, besides all the damage. But some of these places that you normally go maybe to get food, water, animal feed, these places might not be up and running again. So that's why at least 2 weeks post-hurricane supplies. And then don't rely on the government. Don't rely on the government to save you. I mean, you can see with this tragedy, hundreds are still missing and or waiting on rescue. All right, moving on. Next. So I'm pretty sure if y'all been watching news, the port shut down on the East and Gulf Coast. Kind of like a brief overview. So just yesterday, recent port shutdowns along the East and Gulf Coast have caused significant disruptions in the supply chain, leading to a ripple effect across industries. These shutdowns are the result of a combination of factors, including labor disputes, severe weather conditions, and logistic bottlenecks. So some of the ports that are affected, I think we had ports Savannah, Georgia, Port Charleston, South Carolina, Port of Houston in Texas, Port New Orleans of Louisiana, and I think the Miami port in Florida, and there's many more of them. That's all I can remember right now. But these key ports are vital to both national and international trade, serving as a major entry point for imports and exports. With these closures, many industries are going to face delays in receiving goods and materials. So like I said earlier, the causes of this is going to be labor disputes. Several ports have been seeing labor disputes between workers and management, particularly around wages, safety protocols, working conditions. This had led to work stoppages in these key areas such as cargo unloading and loading, weather disruptions. The hurricane season has intensified. Um, and severe storms have temporarily halted port operations. Ports in the Gulf region were specifically vulnerable as storm surges and heavy rains and wind caused flooding and damage to some of that infrastructure. And then the supply chain strain. So the surge in demands for goods combined with logistical challenges in trucking and rail transportation has strained the entire supply chain. Ports are overwhelmed, causing delays even in ports not directly impacted by these shutdowns. So let's talk about some potential impacts that we might see. One is going to be supply shortages. With these major ports facing delays or closures, industries that rely on imported goods may experience shortages. This could affect everything from consumer electronics, vehicles, food, medical supplies, and then, of course, increased prices. With goods taking longer to reach the shelves, prices for essential items could spike. Consumers like yourself and me may see prices increase on imported goods, including fuel, clothing, household items. And then, inflationary pressure could also intensify, especially in these areas depending on international trade. Long-term delays as ports reopen. Whenever they do reopen, there will likely be a significant backlog. Shipping schedules have been thrown off, and it could take weeks, if not months, for the supply chain to normalize. Companies may experience longer lead times for orders, impacting businesses depending on or just-in-time inventory practices, which is a lot of them what they go off nowadays. And then national security and energy. The Gulf Coast ports are critical for the energy sector, particularly in oil and gas imports and exports. Disruptions here could impact energy prices, fuel availability, and national energy security. Any prolonged shutdown could lead to higher gas prices and potential shortages in fuel supply chains. So, what kind of preparation tips do I have for you on this? First one, I would say stock up on essentials. With supply shortages likely, it's important to maintain a healthy stock of essentials, including food, water, medical supplies. As price increase looms, now may be a good time to go ahead and buy items that you could be affected by. Energy resilience. Prepare for potential disruption in fuel availability. Consider alternative energy solutions like maybe solar generators, and keep your vehicles and fuel reserves topped off just in case of shortages. And then financial impact. Rising prices due to supply chain disruptions may affect household budgets. It's wise to anticipate higher costs and adjust financial plans accordingly. Small business, depending on imports, should be prepared for longer delays and consider diversifying suppliers or stockpiling essential goods. So with the recent port shutdowns on the Eastern Gulf Coast, it highlights the fragility of our global supply chain and the critical role these ports play in everyday life. As the situation unfolds, the potential impact on supply shortages, price increase, and national energy security are significant. Prepping for these disruptions will help mitigate some of the challenges ahead, especially with the global economy remains volatile. All right, next, we're talking about the missile strikes and terrorist attacks on Israel. So Israel has came under another coordinated assault in a recent escalation of violence. A missile strike launched from Iran targeted key Israeli military and civilian sites. And just prior to the attack, armed terrorists carried out a violent assault on Israeli civilians and a coordinated gunman attack. These two events have heightened tensions across the region and prompted swift military response from Israel, along with international and regional implications. So the first incident was a terrorist gun attack. Armed terrorists believed to be linked to a militant group supported by Iran launched a series of attacks in a populated area. These gunmen opened fire on crowded public spaces targeting civilians. These terrorists was heavily armed with fully automatic rifles and knives, leading to significant casualties before the Israeli security force could neutralize the attackers. As of right now, 6 people were killed and like 10 were wounded in the shooting and knife attack on Israel's seaside city of Jaffa. That occurred minutes before Iran started launching a huge missile attack on Israel. 5 of the wounded were described as being in serious condition. CCTV footage showed 2 men reportedly armed with assault rifles and a knife, dressed in black, emerged from a train near the light rail stop along Jerusalem Boulevard, where they opened fire on passerbyers as well on a second street nearby. Videos of the aftermath of the attack showed a number of bodies slumped under an awning under the station, while one image shared on social media reportedly showing the men executing one of the wounded as they lay on the ground. The death toll as of right now was 6 civilians that have been killed, with a dozen more injured. Several of these attackers was killed by the IDF, but it is unclear as of right now if all the members of that terrorist cell have been apprehended or eliminated. What I can say is Israel's security force was deployed rapidly, securing the affected areas and hunting for the accomplice. IDF forces have been placed on high alert across the country in case of further attacks. So the second incident was the missile strike from Iran. Within hours of this terrorist attack, Iran launched a series of missiles striking strategic Israeli military bases and civilian infrastructures. The missile barrage came from Iranian territory, marking a significant escalation in hostilities. So as we know right now, that most of the missiles was shot down, but some places was hit with missiles. I'm not 100% sure if it was just all civilian areas or if any IDF installations were hit at this time. I don't want to give any false information, but it did look like that they was able to intercept most of the missiles. Now, in saying that, the missile strike has left several Israeli soldiers and civilians injured. I am hearing word that maybe one Pakistani person might have been killed, but as far as I know, no soldiers or Israelis were killed during this military attack. So the response, I'm pretty sure, I mean, they've already said on the news that Israel will respond. And I figured Israel will retaliate with airstrikes and more missiles targeting Iranian military assets and positions, maybe linked to the from where the missiles were launched at. So what I can say about the hazard of this and potential escalation, one of the main things is going to be regional instability. The missile strike and terrorist attack represented a major escalation on the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran. As Israel continues to retaliate, there is a real possibility of a wider regional war, meaning drawing in neighboring countries and proxy groups. Also, terrorist attacks, terrorist threats. You know, the gunmen that attacked indicates that Iranian or Iran might be using proxies and militant groups to launch ground assaults in addition to missile strikes. Civilians in Israel are on heightened risk and of future terrorist attacks, with sleeper cells potentially waiting just to strike in other urban areas. And then missile warfare. So the use of ballistic and cruise missiles in this conflict pose major threat to Israeli infrastructure and civilian safety. While the Iron Dome is highly effective, but it's not foolproof. Continuous missile strikes could overwhelm defense systems and lead to greater casualties and destruction. And then energy security. As tensions between Israel and Iran escalate, the risk to critical energy infrastructure, both in Israel and a broader region grows. A broader conflict could also disrupt oil shipments in the Persian Gulf, causing global energy market to react. And this also could lead to global implications, meaning the U.S. and Western allies are closely monitoring this situation. Their concerns are that the conflict could drag the U.S. forces into another direction or direct of confrontation, another conflict, as well as impact diplomatic efforts to contain Iran's influence. And then Middle East stability. So this attack further destabilizes an already volatile region, with Iran supporting militant groups in Gaza, Lebanon, Hezbollah, and Syria. The risk of a multi-front war against Israel is increasing. So the only tips I could give for, just say, if people from Israel is watching this, or in the region, is stay informed. Residents in Israel should follow the government's instructions regarding sheltering and evacuation in case of further missile strikes or terrorist attacks. Strengthening infrastructure, meaning civilians and businesses should reinforce their properties, prepare their emergency kits, and have plans in place to respond quickly to missile warnings or security threats. So guys, with this, with the recent missile strikes, terrorist attack on Israel, it represents a dangerous escalation in the conflict with Iran. This coordinated assault highlights the ongoing regional struggle and the potential for further violence. As tensions continue to rise, the situation is poised to draw in multiple actors with serious consequences for both Israel's security and broader regional stability. Staying prepared and vigilant in times of a crisis is essential for survival. Just remember, terrorist attacks has happened here in the U.S. before, and it's highly possible now that we've had our borders wide ass open for 3.5 years now. Have a plan, work your plan. I hope y'all all enjoyed this intel report. I know it's really not very good news, but it's the news that's going on right now. Please like and share this intel report with the people you know, you love. And thanks again. Remember, those who prepare today survive tomorrow. Patriot Prepper out.